What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, Under Center with Abelson, presented by the Real Spiel Podcast. Week 13 has come and gone, and one more week into college football is on the horizon. This season absolutely flew by. We are already here at rivalry weekend. We still have so much in store. We have a lot of games with a lot of college football playoff implications. But before we get to week 14, I wanted to, just quickly recap week 13, go over some of the games that we talked about. We are back on the good side of betting, baby. We're back on the good side. We had a great weekend. Went 4 for 2. I said if we could get maybe 500 plus 500 weekends in a row, we could maybe end the year at 500. So that was a great way to start. 4-2 on our picks. This is not going to be a crazy in-depth, long recap. We're just going to kind of spitball and kind of just quickly touch on all the games and some key takeaways from the weekend of college football. So again, before we get into all this, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We only got maybe a handful of episodes left until the season's over. National championships coming on the horizon. So, hey, let's not take it for granted, and let's get to this episode. First and foremost, I think it's safe to say that Oregon, I think they're for real, man. They're for real. And them being for real, to me, really wasn't a question about if they were for real, but like when would we see that moment? Because Oregon, obviously, this is a team who hadn't really been challenged too much. They played a Penn State team at the moment was pretty good, but obviously they fell off. And then since then, Indiana's the only really tough team they played and they lost to. So it was just a moment of seeing Oregon play against another great team to really kind of get that confirmation. And obviously Oregon USC over the weekend. This was one of the picks we write about. Again, we went 4-2 on our picks. Let's quickly, just before we dive deeper into this, let's go over the picks. I mean, Georgia Tech just absolutely let us down. Absolutely let us. That should have probably been a game I shouldn't have bet, because I ended up making a parlay with some alternate lines, and Georgia Tech's, I still kept them -2.5, and there was the only ticket that sold me. It was like a 10 to win $200 parlay, like plus $1,100 or something, and that ticket was the only ticket that sold me. I had Georgia Tech -2.5. Obviously, that one didn't hit. We had Tennessee -3.5. We'll touch on that game a little bit, but I liked Tennessee on that one all day. We had Oklahoma -7.5. I was a little weary of this one because we got the news that Bo Pribula ended up playing late, right before the game kicked off, like a day before the game kicked off. So the spread dropped to like -5.5, -4.5, but we still kept Oklahoma -7.5. We love the defense for them. Oregon, it was a big spread, but again, we're going to talk about this game right now. But Oregon, I loved Oregon at -9.5. BYU, loved them at -2.5. And then Kentucky, as a Louisville fan, I don't know why I would ever willingly bet on Kentucky to cover. They just got boat raced by Vanderbilt. So again, we ended up 4-2. I'll take that any day of the week. We had a couple of bad weekends in a row. We were, a few picks under 500, so that's a great way to bounce back. But again, talking about Oregon, we were talking about how it was just a matter of when they played another great team to kind of get a little more insight on if they are legit. And we saw them play USC. USC might not be a great team, but they're definitely still, maybe a second-tier Big Ten team. And Oregon just absolutely dominated that game, specifically on the ground. In my preview, that's kind of what I talked about, man, because USC, they kind of proved me wrong over the last couple weeks, playing Iowa and then playing – who else did they play? They played Iowa, and then they played another – Michigan. That's right, earlier in the year. And those are two games where they really didn't get dominated on the ground, especially when you think of the way Michigan likes to play, the way I likes to play. Those are teams who, in the past against USC, could feel like they could just dominate USC. So I thought USC would have a chance this game because it seemed like they may have turned a corner on playing a tough physical style brand of football, because we saw them just completely completely control that game against Iowa in the second half. So I thought they'd have a chance, but I did talk about the balance of Oregon being really one of the determining factors of the game. I thought Oregon is a better version of Michigan and Iowa. I think this year they are a better running team than what usually Michigan and Iowa are, and they're averaging over 240 yards on the ground. And obviously, I think Dante Moore is better than Gronowski. I think he's better than Bryce Underwood as of right now. And the passing attack of Oregon is just so much better. And Oregon, they torched USC on the ground and through the air, man. Sadiq had 2 touchdowns. Dante Moore was wheeling and dealing through the air. On the ground, I mean, between Whittingham and Johnson and I think Hill, the freshman, it just felt like, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Is that the saying? Like, it felt like Oregon was just running for literally 5 to 6 to 7 to 8 yards per carry every time they touched the ball. Every single time they touched the ball, it felt like they were getting at least 5 to 6 plus yards. What did Dante Moore throw for? Dante Moore, he threw for, 22 for 30, 257 yards, 8 yards per pass, 2 touchdowns. And again, the running game, they ran for 179 yards. Whittington had 104. Davidson came in, had 50 and a touchdown. And I mean, on the flip side, because we've seen USC, they've gotten a lot better at being able to run the ball, especially last few games, man. They've been, doing pretty well, and they didn't do anything this game, man. Nothing at all. They had 52 yards on the ground. King Miller had 30. Maiava was a big contributor to that. He had a bunch of games where he was a bunch of plays where he was, extending play and getting some runs in. He ended up with 16 yards. And I think that's really the difference on the game because Oregon got pushed around, man. Or USC, they got pushed around, man. They got pushed around by this Oregon team, and this Oregon team is a tough team. And that's what I talked about in my preview. When it comes to Oregon, man, Dan Lanning, he just gets his guys up for these. I'm not saying they're going to win them all. Obviously we saw them get blown out by Ohio State last year, but in these big moment games, it feels like he's only lost 3 or 4 games to top 10 teams in his career. He lost to Ohio State, obviously. He lost to Indiana and then Washington twice. So he has a pretty good track record of getting his team ready to play these big games. And it's funny because Lincoln Riley said he feels like their team's close, but like it really does not feel like they're close to the top teams. If you're a USC fan, and you guys think you're close to Oregon, you guys aren't even close to Oregon. In Oregon, it feels like it's still maybe a tad bit step down from Indiana and Ohio State. So if you guys aren't even close to Oregon, you guys are not nowhere near in the ballpark for for Indiana and Ohio State. But yeah, man, Oregon, they proved this wrong because, or I guess it depends on what side you're looking at it on. Again, I thought Oregon was a good team. It was more about the fact that I just didn't see them play against great teams. Indiana, the one team they lost to, Penn State, they obviously beat, but Penn State isn't really that team that they were at one point. So to be able to come in and kind of dominate this game against USC, that punt return from Benson kind of opened things up because USC was hanging around, man. USC was hanging around. Oregon would score, USC would score, Oregon would go up. That Benson punt return kind of broke things open for Oregon to go up by 2 scores. Every time Oregon would go up by 2 scores, USC would come back and they would score. So they were kind of trading 14 to 7-point leads, but USC could just never get over the hump. Oregon, Maiava threw 2 interceptions. That's not going to help you out. 2 interceptions, you get a special teams touchdown, and you dominate the run game. That's really the difference, man, and that reflects in the score. Oregon winning by 2 touchdowns on this one. Oklahoma and Mizzou, this was a game we were right about. And we'll talk about Oklahoma a little more in depth, but I just didn't think. Granted, when we talked about the preview, we were discussing it as if Bo Pribula was not playing. Bo Pribula ended up playing, but I was still pretty confident in Oklahoma just because their defense has been just absolutely incredible over the last 3 games. They're just forcing turnovers. They're setting up their offense. They're really winning these games with their defense, man. And this was another one. I thought this would be a low-scoring game. Final score 17-6. Again, the defense of Oklahoma held Mizzou in check. They held the running game in check. Bo Pribula really couldn't get anything going. And the offense made just enough plays. The offense is just opportunistic, man. They're not great, but they're opportunistic. Especially when you have their defense playing as good as they're playing, forcing turnovers and, giving the other team trouble. The offense, they've just been able to strike. They've been able to strike and do enough the last few games. And this was another example. They had the 86-yard touchdown to the wide receiver who caught it like 10 yards deep and just took it to the house. They had another one where they got set up in great field position, and John Mateer made a great pass to the receiver. And again, they hit a field goal. They got turnovers, and that's really all they needed to do. So shout out to Oklahoma for being able to win this type of game. I mean, that's 3 tough games in a row that they've won. Mizzou has a great defense, so whether they're the same team as they were, that's still a solid team with a great run game and a great defense. They beat Alabama, obviously, Oklahoma. And just being able to force turnovers in all those games has just kind of helped them out. But this is kind of one of the takeaways that I did have from this game specifically. Oklahoma, they're a good team. They're a good team. The defense is elite. The defense is great, insane. They're most likely going to make the playoffs. LSU, they just got to beat LSU, who struggled beating WKU over the weekend. So I'm pretty confident they'll be able to handle LSU and, win that game. And if they do, they'll find themselves in the playoff. But my question with Oklahoma is, how serious of a contender are they? Because if I'm being, and I like Oklahoma. I like Oklahoma, like nothing against them. But if we're just being honest, it feels like there's a cap to how good Oklahoma can be. Because this is the 3rd game in a row where, what stats did Mateer have? I should have wrote this down. Because this is the 3rd game in a row where I don't think John Mateer had over 70 passing yards. This is the 3rd game. Let's see. Against Tennessee, we know he had 100 and less than 100. He had 159 against Tennessee. Against Alabama, he had 138 against Alabama. Against Missouri, he had 200. Nope. He had 173 yards. So that's 3 straight games where he didn't even throw for over 173 yards. Outside of, you take the turnovers away, which I'm not trying to take away because turnovers are part of the game. But if you take even just 1 or maybe 2 turnovers away, maybe some field position away, Oklahoma's offense just hasn't been clicking, man. They've been scoring because of their defense. Their defense has been setting up their offense. And I don't want to take that part of Oklahoma's game away because they are a defense who they cause turnovers. They cause teams to turn the ball over, fumble, throw interceptions. So that's a part of who they are. But again, we talked about this last week. Turnovers are a luck stat. They're a chance stat. An interception, a fumble that bounces this way instead of that way can be the result in you either not getting the turnover or not getting the turnover. So it just feels like that's there's a ceiling. There's a ceiling to how I think great a team can be when their offense just isn't clicking and they're relying on their defense to get stops and to essentially set up their offense to score the ball. And when you play a great team who has a good defense and a good offense, who can score the ball, who can put points on, I think that's an area where you can get exposed, man. You can get exposed. So, again, I'm not trying to take anything away from Oklahoma. They are still a good team. I think they have a great defense. They could definitely make some noise in the playoff. They could easily. They won back-to-back ranked games in the SEC on the road. They won 3 straight ranked games in the SEC. So they can definitely make a run in the playoffs, but when things get tight, man, that's definitely going to be something to look at. Florida, Tennessee. This was a game that I had a Friendsgiving on Saturday, so was kind of all over the place and didn't get to fully watch all the games on the slate, but Florida, Tennessee, it's one that I wasn't really watching at the moment. I rewatched it yesterday. Well, I rewatched the first half yesterday. Because actually, all you really needed to watch was the first quarter, and you would have kind of got the gist of the game. I could not bet on Florida. I understand Tennessee hadn't won a home game or a game in the swamp since 2024 or 2004 or like 2003 or however long it's been. But this was just not one of those spots where I thought they were going to have much trouble. I mean, Florida, they are just the epitome of inconsistent. I just think Tennessee was just a better team. Law of averages said eventually the tides were going to turn for them to win one in Gainesville. And that was just an embarrassment of a performance from Florida. An embarrassment of a performance. Tennessee literally scored on their first 4 drives, and the game was over. Like, that was it. Tennessee got the ball, scored first. Florida, they got the ball on their opening drive. They did get a nice, 50 chunk yard play to ball, but they didn't end up getting called back. They went 3 and out. Tennessee got the ball back. Boom, scored. Florida got the ball back. 3 and out again. Tennessee got the ball back. Boom, scored. Florida got the ball back. And then Tennessee got the ball back and boom, scored 4 for 4 on their opening drives, 28-0 in the second quarter. That was pretty much the game. I mean, Florida ended up scoring a field goal and then a touchdown late in the fourth quarter. But, I mean, that was just the game, man. And, I think the epitome of Florida this year was at one point they got a strip sack. They got a strip sack on Joey Aguilar. And Joey Aguilar recovered the ball. I think that's just the epitome of the team. They got a strip sack, fumble. The ball was rolling on the ground. The quarterback who got strip sacked was the one who ended up getting the ball. And the ball rolled. It didn't just fall on the ground and bounce right back into his arms. Joey Aguilar went for the ball and ended up getting the ball. And I think that's just the epitome of Florida, man. But yeah, there's really not much to talk about in this game. There's not really. This game didn't have a lot of bearings on the college football playoffs. I mean, Florida's season was already over. Tennessee, they've lost 3 games. There's really no path for them to make the playoffs. So this was just, good old rivalry game. Tennessee looking to end the streak of losing in Gainesville. Joey Aguilar's last game, or second to last game. I think he's a senior, so I think he's out of here. He's a 6-year player, I think. And yeah, so now if you're Florida, I mean, my takeaway, just my question for Florida is obviously who are you going to hire? But I'm really curious to see. If DJ Lagway stays. Is he going to stay or is he going to leave? That's what I'm really curious to find out. So, yeah, really not much to take away from this game except the fact that Tennessee just completely kicked Florida's ass, man. Speaking of another team who just completely got their ass kicked, Pitt, Georgia Tech. I guess we have to start. A lot of us poked fun at Pat Narduzzi for saying, "Oh, I don't care if we lose. I don't care if we get blown out by Notre Dame. I don't care. All I care about is the ACC games. That's all that matters." And a lot of us made fun of him. This team went out there, didn't play well against Notre Dame, but they just completely kicked Georgia Tech's ass. In that first half, I mean, it was 28-0. Was it 28-0? Yeah, it was 28. Was it 28 or 21-0 at one point? Whatever it was either 21-0 or 28-0 at one point. I mean, Pitt on defense they were just taking it to Georgia Tech, man. In that first quarter / first half, up until late in the second quarter when Georgia Tech put back-to-back scoring drives and it ended up going to half, 28-14. Yeah, they went up 21-0 in the first quarter. It was 28-14 at half because Georgia Tech put together a couple scoring drives, but they were just getting their asses kicked, man. It was because when you think of Georgia Tech, you think of a team, tough, physical brand, Brent Key, hard-nosed team. They were just getting pushed around on the defensive end. I mean, Haynes King, he's been a great quarterback. It was surprising because over the last 2 years, he's only thrown 4 picks. He threw two this year up until the one he had against Pitt, and then he only threw 2 interceptions last year. I don't know, he missed some games last year, but he's been a quarterback who, especially 3 years ago, I think he threw 16 interceptions, they were saying. So he's kind of wrote those wrongs and started being able to take care of the ball, and he just looked flustered. He looked out of sorts. Georgia Tech couldn't get the running game going. We know Pitt has a top 10 run defense. When Pitt did have the ball, Georgia Tech's defense couldn't do anything. Pitt was just faster. They were stronger. They were playing harder. Turner, the running back, he ran for 200 yards and a touchdown. He had 100 yards, over 100 yards by the second quarter. In the second quarter, he already had 100 yards on the ground. And Mason Heinschel, he was just wheeling and dealing, man. First touchdown was just insane. Stepped into the pocket, on the run, threw it in the corner of the end zone. And this was like Florida. The game was pretty much over as soon as it started. Pitt, they did kind of make a comeback. Georgia Tech only scored, 2 touchdowns in the second quarter. But it was really the third quarter that kind of ruined Georgia Tech because they didn't score at all in the third quarter. They had 14 in the fourth quarter, but that was kind of really it. And it's just one of those moments where, like, what are you doing, Georgia Tech? This is the ACC in a nutshell this year. You have everything in front of you. You win the game, you're a lock for the ACC championship game, and then what? You're 60 minutes away from going to the playoffs, likely playing against a team who you'd be favored against. But then you just go out and you just get completely embarrassed by Pitt at home in a night game, sellout crowd, first sellout since 2011 they were saying, and that's the effort you put on. That's the ACC in a nutshell, man. That's the ACC in a nutshell. Shout out to Pitt. I think right now, as far as the ACC goes, I think Virginia and SMU are in the driver's seat. If Virginia wins their next game, I think they go. I think if SMU wins their game and maybe a team or two loses, they go. Miami's obviously still lingering there as a at-large team, but that makes next week's game huge. Miami versus Pitt, because if Pitt plays like that, they have a chance against Miami. They have a real chance against Miami. And we've seen Miami can be a dominant team. They can beat Notre Dame. They can beat these good teams on the trenches, but they can also lose to teams they're not supposed to lose to. SMU, Louisville. So it's gonna be curious. We're gonna be curious to see because right now they're sitting at a 6.5-point favorite. That's gonna be a very, very interesting game. BYU Cincinnati. Again, I was kind of occupied with a Friendsgiving, so I didn't truly get to watch a lot of this game. Heard BYU just dominated on them on the ground. BYU's running back ran for over 200 yards. This was just a game that I just didn't see too much concern with Cincinnati. Like I said in my preview, it just kind of felt like Cincinnati kind of mentally checked out. They lost. They got absolutely handled by Utah, and then they lost to Arizona, and it just felt like that was kind of it. They had momentum. They were kind of peaking, getting to the rankings, getting some buzz, and then kind of quickly went away. Kentucky and Vandy, again, Kentucky just, the way they've been playing, the defense has been playing a lot better. They've been playing good, and Mark Stoops finally seemed motivated. Kind of took him 8-9 weeks to get motivated, but he finally got there. And I didn't think Vandy was going to lose. I had no concern that Vandy was going to win this game. I just thought Kentucky was going to be able to muck it up and make it a close game, but the complete opposite happened. Vandy just absolutely dominated them. Pavia was doing whatever he wanted to. Kentucky had no answers for him, and it was kind of over before it started, man. It was kind of over before it started, 45-17. Yeah, Pavia threw for 484 yards, threw for 5 touchdowns, and yeah, that was kind of it, man. That was kind of it. Let's see. Is there anything else crazy that went on this weekend? Are there any other takeaways? Yeah, I mean, mainly this wasn't really a great weekend to kind of gauge the litmus test of teams. There weren't really a lot of this wasn't a great slate. Obviously, there's no bad weekends of college football, but this wasn't the greatest slate of games. Didn't really see a lot of things to be concerned about. There's not going to be a lot of movements in the rankings this week, at least in the rankings that matter, like the top 15. I don't think there's going to be a lot of movements in those teams. So yeah, that's really it. This was going to be a quick one. We're going to do a college football playoff reaction to the rankings tomorrow. We're going to get that posted. We're going to do a rivalry weekend preview. And hey, so make sure to tune in for all of it. Like, comment, subscribe, and stay up to date on all college football news.